Welcome back to K&L Farms. I'm Ken. I hope this video finds you well. As you've seen on the title is around EDC, and there's going to be a couple things we need to go over, I think, to define my belief. And I seen another content creator, and I'm still puzzled by it, and I was hoping that you could help me with that as we go along. The first thing is homesteading. I've used homesteading or homesteader in the description. Now remember, that title has changed, but the plot of land or the activity on that land has stayed constant. Example, my grandparents had a plot of land. They had a garden. They had some chickens, some pigs. They had some dogs running around type thing, and they were just a farmer. Back their age was either a small farmer or a large farmer. Large farmer would be something around, an ag plot with a lot of crops or a lot of cows. They didn't have that. Then it went to my folks' generation, and in my folks' generation, that same plot of land would be described as a gentleman's farm. They had some, folks had a couple cows, nothing major, not an ag type situation, a fairly big garden, some chickens, some pigs, some dogs, grandkids running around in the yard has always been a constant. So you get to my generation, or the new description of a plot of land, it's a homestead. So I'm a homesteader. So, I got some chickens, some grandkids running around, got a garden, got a big enough plot that I can sustain myself and do that. So that's one thing. The other thing is around EDC, and I always understood that to be everyday carry. Now remember, I've spent a considerable length of time and money, and I prefer not to go off my homestead. I prefer to stay here. Now we have to go, and generally we try and go 1 day a week. So what I'm about to show you is what I personally carry, my EDC, a homesteader's EDC, which is going to be totally different than if I actually lived in town and went to town or was traveling town all the time. And the reason I live in a very rural area on a plot of land is because I don't want to do that. I'd rather be here doing what I want to do, projects or different chores I have, different things that I want to achieve on my homestead. I try not to go to town at any cost. And usually if I'm in town, the first thing I want to do is come back to the homestead and do this. So part of this you can relate with, and part of it you probably can't, but let's start out with the first item this other channel put up. He was a homestead channel, and he said that this is what he carried on a day-to-day basis. And you're going to find it kind of unusual, just like I am puzzled by it. And the first thing he put on was a phone. Well, back when I was working, there were several things I didn't appreciate when I was working, a 60-hour week or an 80-hour week. And one thing would be the phone. Because the phone, you had emails, you had your text, you had a way for your employer to get in contact with you. And the other thing, we always called it a leash. You had a leash on you. You put a phone in your pocket, your employer could contact you anytime they wanted to. So the first thing I did as a homesteader is got rid of the phone. I do not carry a phone at all on a day-to-day basis. In fact, every once in a while I get a phone call from a family member and say, hey, when I've got possession of the phone, hey, I called you the other day, and it's taken me a couple hours to find the phone. Where the phone is in the house. It's in the house somewhere, usually plugged in, usually next to my chair, but a phone is not an option. The other thing I found even puzzling for me when, even back when I was working, but this was still puzzling. Now remember, we're in a homestead type situation right now, and back when I was working, I used to lose a lot of sleep because I was always afraid that the alarm clock wouldn't wake me up. Now the alarm clock normally did, but I had to go to work at a certain time. I had to go, and my first break for coffee was a certain amount of time. My lunch break was at a certain time. My lunch break duration was a certain amount of time. The time I got off work was a certain amount of time. So I did not really appreciate time because we were strapped to time constantly. I was strapped to time. And one of the things I swore when I became a homesteader was I would get up when I like, usually before daylight. Gets daylight outside, eat some breakfast. I go outside and start my chores. I get hungry, come in and have my lunch. Take my lunch break, take it for as long as I'd like. Go out, I get tired, come in, I'm done for the day. So time is not an issue anymore. The other channel, he actually had, like you've seen probably now, he had a wristwatch on each arm, which is puzzling to me. I mean, I don't know if he was afraid that one was going to malfunction or something. And then he had a pocket watch in his pocket. So he had three ways of telling time on him, and he said that was his everyday carry, and a cell phone on him, which has the clock. The other thing I'll tell you about cell phone if you get a homestead is if you're in a rural area, this is just paperwork, because as soon as you get out away from the house at all, there's no cell phone. In fact, the whole town I live in doesn't have cell phone service, so cell phone does me no good. And I'm going to take these watches off because they're starting to bother me, but that's what he said. He said he had a watch on each hand, and he had a pocket watch, which I'm still puzzled by, but maybe you could help me out with in the comments about that. But okay, so let's get the watches off, and I'll put these away after I get back in the house, but because I never wear a watch anymore. Then he had a billfold. Now remember, my everyday activities don't involve me going to town. So this billfold I actually had to dig up and find. And he said don't wear it in your pocket because if you're sitting on it all the time, I'm assuming he was saying in a vehicle all the time, it'll knock your back out, which I found that to be true. That part is true. So I don't carry a billfold. I don't carry a timepiece. I don't carry a cell phone. The other thing he said is a handkerchief. I do carry a handkerchief. He was right about that. The handkerchief is actually, for its intended purpose, also is my first step towards first aid. Now, possibly the end of this video will be around my migration of first aid kits and what I feel is important around first aid kits, but a handkerchief I do carry. The other thing he had, and he said, was he had one of these, and you'll be able to identify what one of these is, and you'll be able to identify what goes inside of here. Inside of here, I don't want to say the word because I don't want to go to YouTube jail again over saying the word. So he had one of these with the item that goes inside there. Problem I have with this is if you're on a homestead like I am and you feel threatened enough you have to pack this all the time. Could you imagine cutting firewood with one of these on? I just can't rationalize it. But the other thing in this is a short range. This item that goes inside here is for short range. By the time if there's a threat and it gets to short range, I'm in trouble. I have two different things that I actually do, and I don't know if you would say they're everyday carry, but I have a long range one of these in the farm truck at all times. And the other thing is, we got a dog. You're that much threat, either move away from where you're located or get you a bigger dog and put a fence up, because we got a dog that she knows when there's somebody within 100 yards and she's going. She's got an attitude, and she'll show it to you. So I'd rather have the dog with me than I ever would one of these if I'm on my own homestead. The other thing he showed, and he went into detail about it, and both of his were fairly expensive, is he had two fixed blade knives. I've never been comfortable with fixed blade knife. These are not half as expensive as the ones he illustrated, but I've never been comfortable with a fixed blade knife on. The other thing that I've never really been comfortable with, even back before I became a YouTuber, was I don't want to show a weapon. I hope I can say weapon on the channel. A weapon to, say I go to the grocery store and I don't want to show a weapon. I don't want to be threatening to other people in the area, because these are tools. They're not a threat to anyone else. So I don't use these. I don't use these. And if I go, you'll see this is an internal, and holds a item inside of here. It's internal. It's not external. I don't like external. I like internal, on both on the fixed blade if I was to wear one, and on this when I go into town, when I wear this, it's internal. You can't tell I've got it on. So I'll show you actually the one I carry. This is what most people carry. that I'm familiar with, no threat whatsoever. I just use it for farming stuff. It's just a little one. It's a cheaper one because I have a tendency of losing these, even though I carry it in my pocket every day. But that's the item I carry. Now we're going to move on. We'll move on to my migration and first aid in just a minute. Okay, so we'll make this fairly quick. Migration for first aid, and I think a point I should bring out to you that's very important is before you actually upgrade, you should try and get some education around how to utilize this. And it doesn't matter how you go about getting the education, but I think the education around utilizing first aid is probably more important than the physical products that you purchase. But first thing, and then I'll tell you a couple points that I learned this last week that I wouldn't have realized, and I think they will come in handy. But the migration is just a standard first aid kit you can buy virtually anywhere, and at least it's a start. Now, no first aid kit is actually better than the other. I think the more important part around that is education. And then I migrated to a standard first aid kit. Now this one usually stays in the house, but this one in the large first aid kit is this one has a trauma bag. One of the things I was going to bring to your attention after I get the trauma bag out of here is verifying your tourniquet is actually an American-made tourniquet and is still in good shape. You got to periodically, you actually have to look at them and see if they're still in good shape, still sanitized. But you got to look around and look at your first aid kit and verify that it's made in the United States, because there's a lot of counterfeits out there, and one thing they're counterfeiting is tourniquets, and it'll say on the back. The way you can identify it is on the back, and this one I've had for a considerable length of time, so I think it was an American-made one. That's one thing. The other thing that I learned just this last week is, say, in my case, I have several first aid kits. This end of the building I'm in is the garage, but that end towards the camera is actually our wood shop, where we do crafts and projects in a wood shop. The key in this, and everybody does it, and I've done it myself, is take the first aid and you mount it up high. You know, my case would probably be 5 feet would be ideal, so that a grandkid could actually come and get it off the wall. But what this other creator said was mount one down low under your workbench, because he was concerned that sometimes you may not be able to stand up. If you get injured in your wood shop and you can't stand up, this would be mounted low enough that you could actually get to it. You could open it up from the ground level and then start applying some first aid, I would assume, in like a cut situation. But he responded to a situation where a person had cut their hand in the shop, younger person. Another person came out of the house. The person that came out of the house to assist the first injured person was a person my age or older. The person that came to assist had a heart attack, was having a heart attack. When they got there, they had a person with a cut hand, pretty good, which you can understand if you get cut in a wood shop, it's going to be a pretty good cut, and a person having a heart attack. So he said in both cases, neither one of them could actually stand up. They were both prone on the ground, because one was going into shock due to the cut and the other one was having a heart attack. So remember, try and mount one of these down low enough that you can actually reach it if you're in your wood shop by yourself.